Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this evening. We're just now letting participants come in. We, of course, are College Aid Pro, and our webinar topic tonight is how to maximize financial aid and scholarships. So we're assuming most of the parents here on the webinar are parents of juniors, class of 2026 or younger, maybe 27, class of 28. So this is really going to be a high-level overview of just how financial aid works, so you can strategize and come up with ways to maximize the amount of financial aid that you get, including scholarships. And so we are going to be talking in a lot of generalities at high level tonight. So I'm sure you're going to have specific questions. And so if you, or, you have unique circumstances with your family. So we're going to try to help you with those specific questions as much as we can. So when we're going to do that, some housekeeping rules is if you have a specific question, you can drop it in the Q&A. If you drop it in the Q&A, whoever's not talking, either or Dan or I, will try to answer as many of those questions as we can as we're going along here. But the other way you can get your particular questions answered is, if we don't get to your question in the Q&A or whatever, is we're going to offer a free consultation for everyone who's on the webinar tonight. That's just a 15-minute consultation with one of the financial aid pros here at College Aid Pro. We'll just kind of talk with you, assess your situation, and try to give you some advice maybe on the best next steps, see if you're on the right track or not, or some things you can do to get more financial aid. And so we're going to drop the link to book that free consult in the chat. And, we got a lot of people on the webinar tonight, over 128 right now, 120 some people. And so I'm sure there'll be a scramble to get on the calendar first. So if you want to schedule a 15-minute free consult, I encourage you to do so sooner than later. So, all right. Okay, so let me share my screen here. Let's see. Am I sharing the right screen?
We're
Dan,
good to go.
that look about right? Okay. My kids call me Boomer because I don't know how to use the technology very well, so we'll see. All
You're
right,
doing
so
so great so far. Don't let him talk to you like that.
all right, fantastic. All right, so our mission here at College Aid Pro, if you don't know about us, hopefully you do, but our mission is to end the student debt crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. And so one of the, our main focus here, what gets us out of bed every morning at College Aid Pro, is helping families figure out how this whole college financial aid system works. College has gotten so expensive. It's gotten complex. It's confusing. It's stressful. And so we're advocates for families, trying to educate parents on how it works, and give you strategies for ways that you can get more financial aid, more scholarship money, so you can lower the cost of college. So that is our mission here. So presenters tonight, my name is Jason Sloan. As my colleague, teammate Dan over here, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I'll let you let Dan tell you about his background. My background is from higher education, actually. I've been a college professor since 2002, and I was a dean for 7 of those years. So I always joke that I'm the former dean that spills the beans, because I like to tell parents how it worked from the inside. But more importantly, I'm a parent of 3. I have 2 kids in college right now. I got an 8th grader coming along too, so I feel your pain. But I got into college financial aid planning when my first son started looking at college 4, 5, or 6 years ago, and just took a deep dive and fell in love with it. I said every parent needs to know this stuff. So both of my kids that are in college right now will graduate debt free, because once you know how the system works, you can really take advantage of it. So, and Dan, you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Also have 3 kids, none of which in college yet, but that's the goal eventually. I'm in the Chicagoland area. Been working with families on figuring out how they're going to pay for their kids' college education since 2004. So I had my own practice since then, but more recently joined the College Aid Pro team maybe about a year and a half ago. So yeah, that's my background, and excited to hopefully get a lot of great knowledge across to parents tonight to help you guys out and get you started.
Yeah, great. Okay, so again, just a reminder, we're about to jump into the topic. If you have questions, drop them in the Q&A. Don't drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A. So, all right, so one of the questions we get all the time is, where do we even start? Parents are just overwhelmed by the whole process. Here's where you start. Go out and get a MyCap account. It's free. If you don't already have one, make sure you go out and start by getting a MyCap account. That's at mycap.collegeaidpro.com. You can get a free basic version. and it's going to help you do a lot. That's our technology software platform. It's going to give you instant net price calculators, different colleges throughout the country. It's going to tell you whether colleges can give you scholarships. It's going to do an instant EFC calculator, what's called an SAI calculator. It gives lots of guidance on FAFSA, CSS profile. It's going to give you a ton of helpful information to make this process a little bit more clear. And so it's very, very helpful to get an account going. If you don't have one, make sure you go get a free account as soon as possible. That's where you start. All right. So what is financial aid? This is all about financial aid and getting more of it. So financial aid is basically a discount off the sticker price of a college. So as you're going to see tonight, colleges play this pricing game where they'll have many of them will have a cost of attendance up here, but most families don't actually pay that cost of attendance because they're given financial aid to reduce the cost. So we call it a sticker price because kind of like when you go, buy a car and you're like, well, how much does this cost? There's a sticker price, but by the time you get done negotiating with the guy or the woman there, you're actually paying quite a bit less. And most colleges do this kind of a game as well. So there's three different kinds of financial aid. Two are called gift aid. That's the green boxes there. And we made them green because it's free money. And so it drives the cost of college down. So what you want to do as a parent strategically is try to get as much of this free money as possible to get the cost down. Okay. One type of gift aid is called grants, and that's free money based on the family's financial profile. We're going to kind of explain this a little bit more here in a sec. But basically, in the fall of the senior year, you're not only going to be applying for admissions, but you're also going to apply for financial aid. And so they're going to ask you to submit a couple of at least one application, maybe two. And on those applications for financial aid, they're going to ask about how much money you have, how much do you make, how much you have in the bank, and that kind of stuff. And based on all of that, they're going to determine if your family has any needs. So, and if you do, they can give you grants. And again, that's free money based on your family's financial profile. The other kind of gift aid you can get is merit-based scholarships. Okay, so generally speaking, if you see the word grant, that's based on financial need. If you see the word scholarship, that's based on the merit of the kid, the student's talent profile, usually grades and test scores, or the ability to shoot a basketball really well or something like that. So most times merit-based scholarships are independent of financial need. So sometimes you can get both. Okay. But the key thing, again, this is gift aid, so it's going to drive the cost down. You don't have to pay it back. The other kind of financial aid you can get, we have it in yellow here. It's called self-help aid. Self-help aid comes in two forms: work study and loans. It is not free money. Okay. Self-help aid helps you pay the bill, but it doesn't drive the cost down. In fact, loans, of course, drive the cost up. So work study is simply the offer of a job. Talk to any parents of seniors. Sometimes a financial aid award will say, you've been awarded work study at the amount of $2,000 or something. What they're saying is your kid can get a job in the cafeteria or the library or whatever and make up to $2,000 a year to help pay the college bills. That's not a bad thing, of course, but it's not reducing the cost of college. And then, of course, loans. Loans are a reality for a lot of families these days because the cost is so expensive. And of course, loans help you pay the bill, but because of the interest, loans drive up the cost, the total cost of college. So generally speaking, high level, you want to try to get as much gift aid as you can, need-based grants and or merit-based scholarships to get the cost down. So you minimize the amount of loans that you have to use because, of course, again, loans increase the cost of college because of the interest. Okay. So how does this work in action? This is an example from the state of Washington. It could be from any state, but this is how works in action. So we got two schools here, right? We got University of Washington right in here, and that's a public university, and we got Gonzaga, a private college. And so if you look at the cost of attendance, total estimated cost of attendance, this first line here, you can see Washington is so much cheaper, right? Well, not so fast, as Coach Corso would say. Because this is the sticker price. It's not going to necessarily be what you pay out of pocket. So when you see cost of attendance, that's all in. That's your tuition, that's your fees, that's your dorm, your food, your dorm, your meal plan, books, supplies, estimates about travel costs and personal expenses, that kind of stuff. Okay. And so, as we're going to see in a second, whenever you file the financial aid applications, you're asking schools to give you some financial aid. Based on what you put on those application files, they're going to generate what is called a student aid index number for your family. And that's basically, it's more complicated than this, but that's basically kind of a ballpark estimate of how much they think you can afford each year. Okay. So in this family, this hypothetical case, by the way, this case is based on a resident of the state of Washington. That's why that cost of attendance is relatively low at this public university. If this was a resident of the state of Ohio, that would be a lot higher. Okay. Um, but the student aid index for this family is 30K. So that means at the University of Washington, this family has $4,500 of financial need. That's the cost of attendance minus the student aid index. Okay. Um, and schools can choose to meet your need if you have need with either gift aid or with loans. Okay. So in this case, the University of Washington, they have some need, $4,500, but how they meet it is they're going to offer your kid loans. They're offering self-help. So the true out-of-pocket cost is still 34. So basically, you're not getting any gift aid from University of Washington. You're going to be full pay. Now let's look at Gonzaga. Very different kind of case. $76,000 to go there. Most of that's tuition. Student aid index for the family is 30K. So they have financial need of $46,000 and change. Okay. And Gonzaga is going to offer this family $39,500 in financial aid. But look what kind of aid Gonzaga is offering this family. $20,000 in merit scholarship and $12,685 in need-based grants. Okay. That's almost $33,000 in free money gift aid that's going to bring the cost down. They're also offering this family some self-help aids, a work study job, and the $5,500 in student loans. So, but when you subtract the free money, the gift aid, the scholarships and grants, you get an out-of-pocket cost, $34,508, and then $40,000 true cost if you add back in the loans. So you're almost in the same ballpark here between Gonzaga and University of Washington. So we tell you this just to see how it all works in action. Don't be confused by the sticker price, the advertised cost of attendance. You got to be smart about how much your actual remaining out-of-pocket net cost is going to be at each school. Okay. So, all right. So hopefully that made sense. Okay. So let's talk about how to get grants. Let's talk about how to get scholarships, because again, that's a gift aid. You want to try to get as much as possible. So let's start with the grants. You want to know, are you going to be eligible for grants? Well, there's a mathematical formula schools use to determine this. Okay. And that formula is COA minus SAI equals FN, or financial need. Cost of attendance, again, that's that all-in sticker price we just talked about. Gonzaga was 76, University of Washington 34 in this case. That's your tuition, fees, living expenses, dorm, cafeteria, books, technology, all that stuff, all in. Then your student aid index is what colleges or the government think you can pay annually for one kid at college. And so the difference is your financial need. Okay, so again, going back to the Gonzaga case, $76,000 cost of attendance, $30,000 SAI, need is $46,000 for that particular family. But importantly, as you kind of saw there, I hinted about it, schools will meet your need in a whole bunch of different ways. And that's what the other thing you have to be aware of as a parent is you might have need, but some schools will meet 100% of that need with grants. They're called meets need schools. And other schools might only meet 50% with gift aid, and the rest 50% offer you a loan. Okay, so say Gonzaga case is a different school at 70,000, your SAI is 30, you have $40,000 of financial need. Some schools might give you a $40,000 grant, so the need is met, total gift completely with gift aid money. However, some other school might be 70 minus 30 at 40 of need, and they're going to give you 20 in grants and 20 in loans. So you have to understand how the student aid index number works in this need-based financial aid calculation formula. But then the other thing you're going to have to know is every individual school, what percentage of need do they meet with grants versus self-help aid? Okay, so I hope that was clear. Okay, now, so this SAI is extremely important. It's the most important number you need to know at the beginning of your financial aid planning journey. So let's talk about this SAI and how it is calculated. Okay, it's basically calculated from a combination of income and assets that you're going to have to report on the financial aid forms. So in the fall, generally it's October 1st. The last 2 years it got pushed back to December, but hopefully it'll be October 1st this year. Every school is going to require you to file what's called the FAFSA. That stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And a bunch of other colleges are going to ask you for a second one in addition to that called the CSS profile. And then some schools have their own individual form too. But on those forms, they're going to say, how much did you earn last year? And how much do you have in the bank? How much do you have in assets? So let's talk about the assets and then we'll talk about the income. What is considered an asset from the perspective of these financial aid forms? It's basically everything but your retirement accounts. Okay. So any money that's in a 401k or IRAs or 403bs or qualified retirement accounts does not count against you from financial aid perspective. Okay. And then secondly, it's the value of those assets on the day you submit the form. So if you file the FAFSA on October 15th, whatever's in your bank account on October 15th is what you would put for the value of your assets from that particular account. So our running joke is, make sure you pay your bills the day before you file the FAFSA. Okay, now we get this question a lot. I live in a high cost of, I live in a high cost of living area, or I have a whole bunch of debt. We have credit card debt, auto loan debt. I'm still paying off my student loans from grad school, med school, whatever. Don't they consider debt? And the answer is no. These financial aid forms don't ask for your debt levels per se. But you will have the opportunity in the journey to talk to the financial aid offices of the schools you're applying to about your unique special circumstances, such as debt, during the appeals process. And that's going to come in the spring of the senior year. So again, I know this is complicated, but hopefully this is helping. So you're going to file the forms in the fall. You're going to put your income and your assets, and they're going to make you an offer in the spring. And then once they make you an offer, you can appeal, and that's when you would tell them about your debt. Okay. Now, the forms are going to ask you, the FAFSA and the CSS profile are going to ask for your students' assets, and they're going to ask for your parents' assets. And they are assessed at different percentages. So here's a planning opportunity for you. Any asset owned in a parent name is factored at a lower percentage rate, 5.6% roughly. Okay. Whereas an asset owned by a student is assessed at 20%. So let's say you have $100,000 in an account that the parent owns. They think $5,600 of that can be used for college every year. Okay, that's the 5.6%. But if it was $100,000 in a student's name, they think $20,000 of that can be used for college. Okay. And where this comes into play most commonly is in the 529 accounts. So 529 is an education savings account, and the parent should be the owner and the student the beneficiary. One of the most common mistakes parents make, we see this a lot, is that parents will report the money in the 529 as a student asset and just make that simple mistake, artificially drive up their student aid index and potentially lose out on financial aid. So mistakes on those forms can really cost you. That's one of the most important parts of this process, is making sure you're not making any mistakes on these forms. And here's another planning opportunity. Especially if you have, a ninth grader or 10th grader, you still have time. If the grandparents want to help with the grandkids' college and they want to give some money, they can open a 529 as the owner and put the grandchild as the beneficiary. And that's not assessed at all because the forms don't ask for money grandparents have. So there's a planning opportunity for you. The other question we get a lot is, what if we have 3 kids and each one has its own 529 plan? Well, you want to report only the one that is applying for financial aid, not all 3. Okay. Another common location for assets is for students going to college is a trust. Okay. So some families have trusts set up and they put some money in there for the kid, and UGMA or UTMA are the most common minor trusts. If it's a trust, the student is the owner and it will be assessed at 20%, just so you know. Okay, so there's potentially another planning opportunity. If you had planned to open a trust and put a whole bunch of money in there for the kid, you might want to think twice about that. Talk to a financial planner for sure. And then the other common mistake we see is jointly owned accounts. If you open up my kids have account at the bank where we do our banking, but I'm a joint owner on all of those because that way we can report it as an asset that I own, not that the kid owns, again, because it's the SAI assessment percentage. Okay. And last thing about assets is real estate. We get this question a lot. I own a home. Should I report that? Well, as it gets more, here's the complexity again. If you're applying to schools that only use the FAFSA, it's not going to ask about the equity in your primary residence. But if you're applying to schools that use the CSS profile, they will ask for the home equity in your primary residence. but every school that uses CSS profile will assess it at a different rate. So some profile schools, as they're called, will consider 100% of your home equity as a liquid asset to be used for college. So your SAI is going to go way up at those kinds of schools if you have a lot of home equity. Other colleges, they're like, well, we'll take 20% of the home equity as a liquid asset. And so you would have a lower SAI at that particular college using their institutional methodology from the CSS profile. So this is why it gets complicated is there's so many different variables that it really can be overwhelming. Now, from the other part of real estate is if you own any commercial investment property, rentals, second home, land, farm, those are going to be assessed on both FAFSA and CSS profile, but your primary residence only on CSS profile schools. Now, what about income? There's where it gets a little tricky too. So the asset value as the is as of the day of the filing. Again, if you file on October 15th, it's whatever you got in the bank that day, whatever you got in the brokerage account that day, value of your home, your rentals that day. But income is pulled from the tax year, from the of the tax year, the prior year from the year you begin college. I know that's confusing. So if your kid is starting college in 2026, the income they're going to look at is from your 2024 tax returns. If your kid's going to college in 27, they're going to look at your 25 tax returns. If your kid's going to 28, they'll look at your 26 tax returns. And that's the base income year that determines in large measure how much financial aid you're going to get in the freshman year of college, the first year of college. So if you have younger students who are ninth graders and 10th graders, that's why you want to start maybe working with a planner, because that base income year is so important. And if you can drive down your base income, your adjusted gross income, which is line 11 on your 1040, if you can drive that down, your SAI will go down 2 years later when the kid goes to college, which means you could qualify potentially for more financial aid. So some planning opportunity there for you if you have enough time. We get this question all the time. I'm sure, Dan, you get it, is like, when's the right time to start financial aid planning, maybe working with a financial aid consultant? And my answer is always freshman year of college. If you can start before the 10th grade year, you might have some control over that base income year. So now if you're past that, there's not much you can do about it on the income side, but there are other strategies you can use. It's also going to ask about student income. If the kid has a job, you're going to have to report that, but it usually doesn't move the needle because students get an income allowance of a little bit over 11,500 before it starts to hurt them. So I rarely see student income moving the needle much on the student aid index number, only in cases like where you're a business owner family and the kid's employed by the business and they're getting a lot of money and they put in Roth or something like that. But okay, here's another question we get. Well, we make a lot of money. Our SAI is going to be so high, we're not going to get need-based aid. So what's the point? Why file out the FAFSA? Why even go through all this? Well, if you're a high income, high asset family and you don't qualify for need-based aid, it doesn't mean you can't get any financial aid. You just need a different strategy. Okay, so there's two things you need to really focus on. One is merit aid and competition. So let's talk through that a little bit. Okay, so as I said early in the presentation, there's two kinds of gift aid: grants based on your need and merit based on your scholarships. The merit scholarships based on your kid's talent profile. And so the merit aid is almost always independent of financial need. Okay, so if your kid has good grades and good test scores or some kind of talent, I have a family I'm working with now. She got a big viola scholarship from University of Georgia because she's a great viola player. So that would be a merit aid award. It doesn't matter what your income is. In most cases, you're still going to be eligible for the merit aid. Okay, so you want to look for schools that be generous with scholarships for your kid. That's one strategy. Okay, and but here's the thing: most colleges that do give out scholarships require you to file the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So even if you're not going to qualify for any need-based aid, you make too much money, you have too much assets, you still want to file these forms because they're almost always required to get the scholarship money. I've seen this mistake happen over and over again where parents are like, we didn't file the FAFSA. And then my kid missed out on a scholarship. We didn't think we were going to get any aid, so we didn't want to waste our time, and they missed out. They left money on the table. So if you want to know, but here's the other thing. Not every school gives out scholarships. You got to know, does this college give out scholarships and how generous are they with scholarships? Because some schools are way more generous than others, and some schools don't give any scholarships. This is often very shocking for families with very high achieving students. Some of the most, prestigious universities, I always use that in quotes because I hate rankings, but that's a different presentation. Some of the most prestigious colleges in the country don't give out scholarships. The Ivy Leagues, for example, the NESCAC schools up in New England, small colleges up in New England. I just talked to a family last week. The kid had a perfect ACT score, 36, and they thought for sure they were going to get full ride scholarships to the Ivies where the kid got in. They didn't get zero. They got zero. So the kid's now looking at going at an Ivy League school at over $90,000 a year. He had a perfect ACT. I was like, I mean, I wish you would have talked to us, a year or two ago. We could have advised you that the schools on your list are meets need only. They don't give out any merit aid. And you could have instead looked at schools that would have thrown money at you. You could have gone for, really low price, lots and lots of schools with those kinds of stats and that test score. So it was really kind of heartbreaking. So if you want to know, do the schools that we're looking at give merit aid scholarship, like if you're a high SAI family, the MyCap account will tell you that. So the free version, you can put in three schools, up to three schools. You put in the MyCap software, you're going to put in your income and your assets to generate an SAI, then put in your kids' grades and test scores and what they're going to major in and some other information about the kid. And it's going to project whether or how much merit aid the schools you're looking at are going to give you. So it's a really powerful tool to use MyCap for that. Okay. And then the other strategy, when you're going after merit aid, you're trying to get merit aid because you're not going to get any need-based aid. Think about applying to competing colleges. Okay. Because you may be able to leverage that down the road. So let me give you an example of that. I went to undergrad at a little small liberal arts college in Ohio called the College of Worcester. Okay. So I'm a Worcester grad, and Worcester's competing. They're competing with some other small liberal arts colleges in the Midwest. So like Kenyon College, Denison, Oberlin. And so if your kid's interested in going to the College of Worcester, you might also want to consider applying to Denison and Kenyon, even if even if your kid's not interested in those schools, because you can maybe leverage that as a competitive scholarship appeal later on. So if Denison gives you a bigger scholarship than Worcester and you want to go to Worcester, maybe I'll go to Denison and say, hey, Worcester gave us, or you go to Worcester, excuse me, and say, hey, Denison gave us a pretty big scholarship. Could you match that? So that's another strategy for high SAI families who aren't getting a need-based aid. Okay. So a little bit more about merit-based aid for those of you who are high income. This is a really important strategy for you if cost is a concern, which I'm sure it is for most families. The merit-based aid comes from the Office of Admissions. It doesn't come from the Office of Financial Aid. I know that's weird, but here's why. Schools use merit aid awards like scholarships to entice the best students to attend. Okay. Usually based on grades and test scores. So all colleges want to, attract the best and brightest students for lots of reasons. And so if you're a high achieving, high stat student or have some kind of talent in music, sports, or whatever, a lot of schools will give you merit scholarships because they are trying to entice that kid to enroll. All right. Quick note about test scores. You may have heard that schools are now test optional. Well, keep an eye on that. That's, in my opinion, a little scam a lot of colleges are running. They're test optional for admissions, but probably not for scholarships. So I know so many families I've been talking to, they're like, well, we didn't submit test scores because we thought it was test optional. I was like, yeah, it was for admissions, but not for scholarship, and you missed out. You could have gotten some scholarship money. So pay attention to that. These are merit-based aid is great also because it's usually good for all 4 years. It's renewable as long as your kid maintains a certain GPA threshold. Both of my kids have the Hope Scholarship, which is a state-based award in Georgia, and it's merit-based. You got to have a 3.0 GPA, and if you fall below that, you lose the scholarship. So as long as you maintain that certain threshold, you're going to give for all 4 years. Now, different schools have different methodologies for awarding merit. This makes it tricky. Some schools have automatic scholarships. So if you get a 30 ACT, you're going to get a $20,000 scholarship. You get a 32, you get a $30,000 scholarship or whatever that, those are called grids, merit-based grids. But other schools, it's competitive. So you apply for them and then they take a look at all the people who applied to that school for the freshman class and give it out to the best and brightest. So you don't know for sure if you're going to get it or not in those particular cases. All right. And generally speaking, it's a generalization. There are some exceptions, but private colleges tend to give out more merit aid than public universities do. And so just be aware of that. This is the other thing we see a lot of times. If your kid's applying to a public university in another state, they go out of state, you're going to lose the in-state subsidy and you're going to end up paying double. And a lot of those out-of-state publics don't give hardly any aid. So I live in Georgia. If my kids want to go to Ohio State, they're going to be full pay at Ohio State because Ohio State's probably not going to give them any merit-based aid. If they want to go to Penn State, they're going to be probably full pay, 60 grand a year, because Penn State doesn't give any doesn't give any merit aid. Okay. Unlike Worcester, that gives a lot of merit aid. So that's an important piece of it too. So, all right. I've been talking a lot. How about we kind of take a look at what this looks like in action? Let me see if I can pull up a MyCap account. And so you can see, bear with me here while I try to navigate the technology. All right. All right. Can you see that, Dan?
Yeah, you're good.
Good. All right. Good deal. So this is just a dummy case in a MyCap account here. This family has a student named Vivian. And so they fill out their profile. They're going to put in all the relevant information, like where you live, what state you're in, what year you're graduating, what your grades and test scores are. Do you have any siblings? How much you earn and have as a student? How much do mom and dad make, and so forth and so on. And the system's then going to generate for you your student aid index at FAFSA schools and the student aid index at CSS profile schools. So you'll probably notice right away that in this particular case, FAFSA schools think this family can afford $69,000 per year for college, and CSS profile schools think this family can afford 38 to 44. So generally speaking, probably these schools are going to be better net cost than these schools, but not necessarily. You have to dive into the individual schools. So we've plugged in a few schools here. In this particular case, this family lives in Massachusetts. So the first I'm going to have you look at is, look here, University of Massachusetts. That's a public university, and the in-state residency sticker price is under 40. Now look at Cal Berkeley. Because it's out of state, public university, sticker price is double. That's very, very common. If your kid's looking at public university somewhere else, or like, oh, I'm looking at Alabama, or I'm looking at Texas, or looking at Colorado, and you live in Ohio, you're going to have this kind of trend probably. Now let's look at some private colleges. Got the University of Pennsylvania. We got Penn, big sticker price, right? But Penn will meet lots of need. So how do we determine need? Sticker price minus the SAI, demonstrated need. The net cost of this, Penn meets 100% of need with grants, gift aid. The net cost, 40 grand per year. So this family, because of the way financial aid works, if this family knows this in advance and the kids got good enough grades to get in, they can go to Penn for the same cost as going to UMass Amherst. Okay. So if you didn't know how financial aid works, how the system works, a family might not apply to Penn because like, there's no way we can do 92K. And the other side of it is a family might be in Massachusetts and be like, oh, I really want to go to UCal Berkeley for whatever reason, something. Let's apply there and hope we get a big scholarship. When in fact, you're not going to get any money for Berkeley, you're going to be full pay. So this is the power of the MyCap software. And there's some other features to it as well. But again, if you haven't created a MyCap account, this is the premium version, by the way. You can do an unlimited number of schools and some other cool tools. Like you can actually do a school search, almost like Orbit style, by various criteria. Very, very powerful by location, finances, academic ranks. You can look for schools. So if you have certain criteria, and then later on in your process, you can upload financial aid award offers to see if those are good offers or bad offers. And then if they're bad offers, that gives you a good basis for appeal. And we're also going to give you some advice in the system on how to pay the bill once you get to the spring of the senior year and you know how much these schools are going to cost. And then the last thing we do is we help families with a return on investment analysis through the system. We have an affordability profile. You can see this student is going to be, what do we have as a major? Undecided major, not sure he wants to study. So if we go to Boston College, you're going to, for 4 years, it's going to be 28 grand. The average student, so you're going to have to take out a whole bunch of loans. This family has come up with a $100,000 budget from 529 and other money. So to pay for college at BC, they're going to have to come up with $127,000 in loans. And the average grad's going to have this payment per month. And so we say that affordability profile is caution. Contrast Penn, affordability profile, great. Because they have a $100,000 budget. It's only cost $124 to go there. You got $24K in loans. That's a pretty good ROI analysis. So that's how this all works in action. And again, if you haven't created a MyCap account yet, make sure you do. Okay. All right. So let's jump back in. I'm going to stop talking. Dan, you want to take over?
Let's do it.
From there. All right.
All right.
Are we
So
back on the slides?
not yet. No, put it back up there. I'll let you know. Okay. Now I think we're good. All
Okay,
right. Perfect.
fantastic.
Okay. Sorry. I was answering questions. Did you already cover this slide or no?
Oh, I did. Sorry.
Okay.
Let's click out of the slide here. There we go.
Okay. So, in terms of applying for financial aid, kind of similar to the merit-based scholarships, no two schools are alike. We kind of just did a good little preview of that right there, right? In terms of, wow, I don't know if I can afford Penn. They're like almost $100,000 a year. I'm not going to apply there. And then, you look at that and it compared to the in-state public school. So, um, just trying to highlight, depending on your situation, you may not necessarily want to rule out these higher priced private schools, which generally going to be far more giving than the public ones. Um, and figure every school requires the FAFSA. So whether it's your local community college or Harvard or anywhere in between, you're doing the FAFSA form. Then, if you're really lucky and your kid applies to one of the 200 or so schools that requires the CSS profile, that's an additional financial aid form that you have to submit on top of the FAFSA. Schools that fall into that category would be like Northwestern, Vanderbilt, your Ivy League schools, Tulane, University of Miami, and there's public schools too, like Michigan, Virginia, and North Carolina. And uh, deadlines are paramount. Listen, I think one of the most confusing things about this whole convoluted process is every school has different requirements, different deadlines, different everything. It's like when you ask a question, it's hard to answer it in a general sense because everybody's doing things differently. Um, so the deadline is going to depend on the school and then how the student is applying. Early decision, early action, regular decision, returning student. So all of those take into factor into when the deadline is for the financial aid forms, and it's up to you. They're typically not going to be proactive in telling you when this stuff is due. It's going to be on you going to their website and seeing the respective due dates based on how your student is applying. But generally speaking, if the kid's applying early decision, it's probably a deadline around mid-November, early action, mid-late December, regular decision, January, February, and then returning student, March or April. But again, that's general deadlines. You need to check with the colleges to see the specific one for your student based on where they're applying and how they applied for admission. Okay, so for the FAFSA form, again, this is the one we got to do for every school. Um, it's supposed to go live October 1st. I don't know, Jason, I don't think we have confirmation on that yet, do we? I know they've been talking about it, but
Yeah, I think they intend to
yeah,
open it
yeah. Okay. So, well, whatever they
October
intend, who the
1st.
hell knows what that's actually means, but
We'll see.
yeah. So they've been saying it's going to be October 1st for a while now, but that was before they cut half the staff. So your guess is as good as mine. It was, early January 2 years ago. It was early December last year. So they've been creeping closer to that October 1st date. So we'll assume it's probably going to be on or around there. So if you've got like a junior right now, there's nothing you can do at this point. You got to wait about 6 months before you can get into that form. And like Jason talked about, for those juniors graduating in 2026, it's going to be off the 2024 income. So the good news is if you filed or about to file that tax return, we can get pretty accurate in terms of predicting what your SAI is going to be based on that information, which is obviously critical in determining the SAI. If the parents are divorced, um, let's say, for example, mom and dad are divorced, they both live in separate households, neither of them are remarried, and they determine that mom is the custodial parent. For FAFSA rules, the custodial parent is not who earned the most money, it is not where the kid lived with, it is not who claimed the student on the tax return. It is which parent provided a majority of that student's financial support the preceding 12 months. So as you can imagine, If you're divorced, this is an area where we can get strategic and potentially identify a parent that could possibly increase the chances of students, grants, and scholarships over the other parent. So if you're in that type of a situation, I would strongly suggest scheduling a free consult with Jason or myself so we can review your personal information and guide you on what might make the most sense and strategize around that. Um, if the custodial parent, let's say, is mom, then only mom's information is going on that FAFSA. Nothing about dad or the ex-husband is going to be on there other than any child support or taxable alimony he might provide her. Um, so if the parents are divorced and not remarried and living separately, only one parent's information can go on there. Um, what you could do before the fast was live, if you want to get ahead of things, which makes sense, is create an FSAID account for yourself and your student. Both the student and the parent needs a valid FSAID before the FAFSA can be submitted. It does take a couple days after creating the account for it to be verified by the Social Security Administration and it to be activated. So you would want to create those accounts before the FAFSA goes live. So when it does, you're all ready to go, can log in and get in there and let the fun begin and start submitting the form.
Speaking of fun, how about the CSS profile?
Yeah, capital F. Um, so CSS profile, again, this is that other form. There was a great I almost want to hold on. I'm going to go back to the Q&A. I want to read this question to you, Jason, and let me know how you'd answer it. Where was it?
I had a parent once describe the CSS profile as a financial colonoscopy. It's like
Right.
that's pretty.
Uh, God, am I going to find it? Where was it?
The CSS profile is no fun,
It
especially
was something like, are you going to cover like what's on the CSS and not on the FAFSA? And I was like, I don't think there's enough characters in the Q&A box to answer that question, right? This form is generally, it's
oh,
going to be much more intense than the FAFSA.
it's awful.
So it's not free either. Not only is it worse and more time consuming, you're going to have to pay to do it. And again, there's like 250 colleges approximately that utilize it. If you go to, let me see if I'll put this in the chat right now. Um, I'll put in the chat the colleges that use it so you can go to the website and just see which schools are there. But if the school requires it, you're going to have to do this on top of the FAFSA form. The major difference, I would say, in terms of the SAI calculation is home equity. So unlike the FAFSA that Jason talked about, you do not have to report your home. CSS, you do. They're going to ask you, what year did you buy your house? What did you pay for it? What is it worth today? What is your mortgage balance? What's your monthly payment? Um, and most schools are going to look at that estimated value against your mortgage balance, and they're going to take that equity and they're just going to plop it right into their SAI formula, and they're going to think you can, mortgage a percentage of your home to pay for college. So if you have the unfortunate responsibility of filling out this form, do not try and impress them with your home's value and overinflate it, and in essence, create an added value that they're going to want to take into account when they're determining how much they can afford to give you in the form of grants. Also, some differences for divorced families. The example I gave earlier, mom and dad were divorced, not remarried, living in separate residences. Mom's the custodial parent. Only her information is on the FAFSA. Boom, kid applies to Northwestern. Now they need the CSS profile and the non-custodial profile. So then that's when dad or the ex-spouse's financial information will come into play too. Most schools who require the CSS require the non-custodial CSS. And on that link I just put in the chat, it will detail every college as to whether they do or they don't. But if the non-custodial profile is required, then the non-custodial parent has to submit their finances and fill the form out too. You can get a waiver for that. That's a case-to-case basis. If the ex just doesn't want to fill out the forms, that's not going to grant the waiver. You're usually going to have some pretty extenuating circumstances, no contact with the parent. You're going to have notes from like, maybe people at the high school or your church, things of that nature, verifying things. So it can happen, but you've got to have a really strong case to get that waiver. Um, Business owners, gets pretty intense for them too. They're going to ask lots of details about your business. What was the date it started? What kind of, corporate tax filing do you use? What was the gross revenues and the expenses? Are any family members on the payroll? What percentage do you own? What's it worth? Is there any debt? It's like it never ends. Death by a thousand paper cuts. Um, and the only good news is it's not run by the government, so you don't have to worry about verification codes and FSA IDs and creating those accounts. It's done through the College Board website. Most kids set up their own College Board account when they're in high school, so they'll just share their login credentials with you, and that's how you'll get in to the CSS profile.
All right.
Okay. I think we just had one in here too about this. Are you able to decline the offer from an early decision college if the financial package is still challenging for the parents? Great question. So, early decision is a binding agreement. So, especially this is something that's going to come up here probably for a lot of the parents that have juniors here in the next couple months. Um, in my experience, the kids want to apply early decision because in general, it increases their chances of admission. And what do they care? They're not paying for the bill, right? That's on you. So, um, great way to get into college. Horrible way to think about paying for it, right? Because instead of seeing multiple offers and having leverage and being able to negotiate, you're committing to a school and their price point, which is generally very high, before you know what they're going to do in terms of an offer. Most schools will give you an out if um, the award does not meet your expectations. But I would definitely meet with Jason or myself or someone and have a very good understanding of what that offer is going to look like before you pull the trigger. Don't go in there blind just thinking, oh, if it doesn't give me as much money, I'll just back out and we'll move on because you have to sign this agreement. The high school has to pass on. If you renege on it, it looks poorly on the high school, and there's just a whole slew of issues that it could arise. I'm not saying it's not possible, and every school does that differently. But again, I've been doing this 21 years, and I've never gone through a situation where someone opted out of the ED agreement. So as you can imagine, again, you're only going to get to see that one offer. Not to say they're going to make you a bad offer, but you're not going to get to see what all the other colleges are doing because you have to rescind those applications after it's been accepted. Versus early action. Now, this is good because you're still applying early. You're going to get the results early, but it's not binding. So you're still going to get to see all of the other awards before you determine where your kid is going to go. Um, so in a perfect world, we'd apply to every school early action. We'd get into every school. We'd see every school's offer, and then we would decide from there. But obviously, not all schools offer early decision or early action. Some offer only one or the other. So some have restrictive early action. Some have early decision too. It just kind of goes on and on here in terms of the myriad of options. And then lastly, you've got regular decisions. So now this is kind of the latest in terms of the due dates. And it's also the latest in terms of when you'd hear back from the schools. I mean, if you can imagine, if you apply to University of Arizona, say in like early August when the Common App comes out, they'll notify you in a week or two that you've been accepted. So you could know like mid-August, you're into University of Arizona. And then if you have to apply regular decision to, Northwestern or one of those schools, you're not going to hear until like April 1st. So, I mean, there could be, almost 8 months of time could go by between the two different decisions, depending on how the student is applying. Usually, if it's early decision, you're going to get notified mid-December of the acceptance and what they're offering. Appeals. Okay, this is again, I think we've got mostly underclassmen on this webinar. So I won't go too much into the appeals, but this is something that Jason and I are working on right now for all of the parents who have seniors. So now, as you can imagine, they kind of have the awards from the schools and they're assuming they didn't go early decision, they're trying to gauge where they're going to commit by May 1st. You go on Facebook and anyone's going to say, "Oh, you can appeal to colleges. You just appeal and you get more money. It's really simple." Well, it's not necessarily that simple. A lot depends, in my opinion, on the school that you're trying to appeal, sometimes more than the actual circumstance. In general, appealing to a large public university like like a Rutgers or a Penn State or a UC school or whatever, even if you have a change in financial circumstances and maybe you lost your job or something, but it's going to be very difficult. For the most part, too, those large public universities definitely going to be very difficult if you're trying to show them other awards to try and convince them to come up with more money. Versus at the private schools, that's generally where you're going to have a little bit more flexibility and figure at like the smaller liberal arts private colleges, probably even more so. Schools that aren't getting 100,000 applications a year like UCLA. But it's our job to figure out with our clients, okay, what's the situation, what's changed, or what can we like go back to the college and tell them about to try and get them to increase their initial award? Because there are a lot of things that can be going on within your financial situation that FAFSA isn't going to ask about, and maybe even the CSS profile, even how detailed it is. So it's on you to be proactive and make the schools aware of what's going on in your situation to see if they can help by providing more grants or scholarships. Um, but there's also a lot of things that are going on in our situation that they're not going to care about. Hot topic items would be like K through 12 private high school costs, or another kid in college, reduction of income, high medical expenses, support to other family members. But if you're in debt, or maybe you've got like car loans, or you lost your job 5 years ago, but that took a toll on you, but now you're back working. It's kind of more like what's happening right now, not what happened in the past or what could happen in the future. So you also have to be cognizant of like what type of things the schools are going to take into account, and what they're not going to take into account when determining what's the best way to approach them.
All right. All right, want to take this one, Dan? You want me to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. I know this was, probably a lot of information in a short amount of time. And obviously, like Jason talked about at the beginning, it's pretty much general information, right? Like we're not able to get too specific of each individual's circumstances in this type of a format, but we can do that through a free consult. And in essence, what Jason and I are basically doing is we're working with families on a one-on-one basis, helping them like as a junior per se, identify now what schools that the student's looking at and understanding what the costs associated are, what grants and scholarships are going to be available based on the finances of the parent and the grades and scores of the student. Maybe suggesting other schools that are going to be more giving than the ones they're initially looking at. Understanding how to increase those offers, and then we are the ones that then are submitting the financial aid forms on the parent's behalf, kind of like as an accountant does your taxes to reduce taxes and take it off your plate, kind of a similar process here. And then working with you from there to understand how you're going to pay for college, helping you appeal to the colleges to get more money. Basically taking you through the process from, when the kid's starting to evaluate where they're going to apply all the way up until, when they go off to college in the fall. And if you'd like to learn more about how we work with clients and understanding your personal situation and how we can or maybe can't help, it's best to do that through the free Zoom consult. I would say the caveat there is if you're going to set up that consult, you do have to set up one of those MyCap accounts and complete it as best you can. We've only
Yeah.
got 15 minutes. The more accurately you complete that profile, the more information Jason and I have while we're meeting, we're just going to be able to make the best use of our time. So you definitely want to complete the free MyCap account prior to holding that meeting. And then during the meeting, we'll go through your information and be able to give you a more accurate idea of, like I said, how we can or cannot help based on your particular situation, and kind of take it from there in terms of if it makes sense to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Just had a great question. Sort of good point here. Somebody asked about the cost of our program, and the answer is it all depends. Like it depends on what kind of level of service and support you would need. For some families, if you're confident and got plenty of time and you're not stressed out about it, et cetera, you might be able to do it all on your own. You can DIY it with our MyCap software, like a TurboTax again, but for other families, they might want or need full support because they're like, look, I'm busy. I had one of my clients said, just take this off my plate. I am so tired of stressing about this and so tired of fighting with my kid and my spouse. And, so, in terms of cost, just book a free 15-minute consult because Stan said, we'll kind of just talk with you about your situation, what's going on, and look at your MyCap account. We'll be able to pretty quickly say, okay, we can see what's going on here. Yeah, you probably really could use some help because, so some families are going to want full service. Some are going to want, just to be able to use the MyCap account, some general advice. So it all depends on what level of service you need. And in some families want help with the admissions side, as well as the financial aid side, both. Some just want help with the financial aid side. So it all depends on what you want. If you book a 15-minute consult, we'd happy to chat with you about all that. So
Yeah, it can be anything from the full package, so you can book hourly meetings if you just need a little help here or there. But um, we'll be able to give you a better guide on that when we meet in terms of how much help you need.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, we got some time to answer some questions.
yeah, one came in. So if an early decision is offered in December, but FAFSA is not open till December, like last year, then how would they work? So most schools who offer early decision require the CSS profile. And when FAFSA started going through these issues the past few years, those schools, because as you said, the deadline's in November, right? If the FAFSA isn't open till December, how are they going to do that? So basically, they'll just go off the CSS profile data to then provide the financial aid award. Um, do not worry about when the FAFSA opens, if it's late or if it's early. Every school will understand that, and then every family is going to be in the same circumstance. So don't think that like if the FAFSA is late, that there could be some deadline before it's open that's going to hurt your chances. That's just not going to happen. So everyone's going to be dealing with the same thing. The colleges are going to be aware of it. And quite honestly, 2 years ago, especially schools that required the CSS, the FAFSA screwed it up. That like they were just like, just complete it whenever you want. We don't even care. We're not even going to look at it because there's so many mistakes. So
Yeah. Um, all right. Let's just type in an answer there. Oh, I got the same question again. What is the cost of the services? Again, it all depends on what kind of help you're looking for. Financial aid only, admissions both. You need full service. And so there's no simple answer to that. But it does have a pretty good return on investment. I think we've done some analysis on the full service families we worked with over the last few years, and I think it was on average, we saved about $69,000 per family on average or something like that. So it's pretty good. There's a lot you can do, even if you're high income, high asset family or low income or in the middle. If you're one of those families stuck in the middle, there's a lot you can do if you just know how the system works, to get the cost of college down. And so that's the value, of, of working with somebody like us. So, applying for EA. So as applying for EA could help with financial aid, like with college grants. Yeah, again, Dan talked about that. If you go early action, it's, in my opinion, kind of one of the better strategies because you get a little bit of an earlier look on the admission side, but also um, it's going to give you more opportunities to compare what that school offered you with other schools offered you. And so you might have the ability to do like competitive appeals during the appeal process and so forth and so on. So I always think that's a pretty good strategy, to get more financial aid. Dan, would you agree or?
100%, yeah. Plus, especially at the public schools, sometimes their scholarships are just automatic and all you have to do is apply, but you have to apply by a certain date, which is usually the
Yeah,
priority early action deadline. So it's like at Indiana, if you apply after November 1st, you can get accepted, but you're not getting any scholarships. So plus then it's done. Like you want, trust me, you're going to want to get this over with as quickly as possible. So
yeah,
once,
yeah.
if you can, like I tell my clients, I'm like, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay. I mean, most schools, it's not November 1st and then you're dead, but it's kind of like a good, I would say, date to have in your back of your mind. Like, hey, if we could get all this done by then you pretty much know you've met every deadline and then it's behind you. Um,
All right, we got about one more question. I guess it's 8 o'clock. My goodness, time flies. Okay. One more question. How much do test scores play into getting merit scholarship? And do some
Depends on
schools?
the school.
Yeah, it depends on the school. Absolutely right. Depends on the school. Some schools it matters a lot. Some schools it doesn't at all. So it all
We
depends
should
on the
just
school.
answer every question that
Yeah,
way.
I know.
Depends on the
I know.
school.
I feel like I say that it all depends on the school, but it's so true. And Super Score, if you don't know about Super Score, you should. That's when you take the SAT, take the test multiple times and take your best score from each one and put them together to Super Score. Some schools accept that, some don't. Again, depends, right? All right, last
Yep.
question. Last question.
Here's one I want. This is the one I really liked. Is it okay to appeal even if you have a quote good offer on paper? I have pretty good offer, but still will be in debt and have been feeling guilty about wanting to appeal. Do not feel guilty. Call the college up and ask for more money. The worst they're going to do is say no. Like there's no downside. And do not feel bad or guilty about calling these colleges who are charging God knows what and asking for more help. That is what they're there to help you with. I mean, some are better than others, obviously, but don't feel like you're the only one calling that school and feel kind of like icky about asking for money when you're about to spend all this money on this education. So they're ideally there to help. They're always answering questions like that. You're not going to be the only one. The worst thing they're going to do is say no. But you do have to be smart about how you're approaching the appeal if you want to be successful.
All right, one more time, I'm going to put the link to the free consult in there. I've answered a lot of questions saying, talk to us. It's a complicated situation. So there it is one more time in the chat. The link to book a consult with somebody on the College Aid Pro team. So thank you all for attending. Dan, thank you. Appreciate it. It's always fun doing these with you. Hopefully it was
Yep, you
helpful.
too.
Yeah, hopefully it was helpful, everyone. Again, I'm sure you have, it's a lot of information. Hopefully it wasn't overwhelming, but I encourage you to take advantage of that free 15-minute consult. It'll lower your stress if nothing else, that's for sure. So you will get a copy of the recording, so keep an eye out for that. And last thing is make sure you have a MyCap account. If you haven't set one up, make sure you go out and set up a free MyCap account. And good luck to everyone. We're rooting for you.
Have a great night.